Hey guys, how you doing? I wish I could be there with you today, but I'm taking my kiddo to go get a passport. So we're gonna do our notes via video today. You should have created a unit circle in last time's notes. However, just in case you didn't, I have given you a fresh blank unit circle. So if you want to use your one from last time, that's fine. Or if you like this one, that's fine as well. Okay, if you remember from last class, the x coordinate is going to be the answer for cosine, and the y coordinate is going to be the answer for sine. So you should have already done a whole homework on this. If you didn't, though, hopefully you can do it today. Remember that angles not in standard position can be evaluated by finding a coterminal angle in the same position. Remember, you do that by adding or subtracting 360 degrees. When we're talking about standard position, okay, that would be from 0 to 360 degrees. Okay, that's considered standard position. Okay, and the reason that it's called that is because that's how far your circle traces, that you start at 0, you go all the way around the circle once, that would be 360. So if you will, please, I'm going to take my first page of my notes and just pluck it off, okay, because all of our examples are here on the second page. So it says, using the unit circle finds the given trig values. So if I want the cosine of 60 degrees, I'm going to go on my circle here. I'm going to find 60 degrees. Remember, you're always starting from here and rotating this way for positive angles. So 60 is here. Cosine is 1/2. Let's say I want the cosine of 180 degrees. 180 degrees would be here. Cosine is the x value, which would be -1. Okay, let's go over to these examples. I want the sine of 60. Then I would find 60 degrees. But remember that sine is going to be my y value, or the y coordinate. So 60 degrees, my y coordinate is √3/2. Sine of 90 degrees. 90 degrees would be here. My y value is a 1. Okay, and then let's jump ahead to number 7. I want the cosine of 690, but then I notice, that is too big to be on my circle. Then all that I need to do is minus 360 off of that. Okay, so just to be a little bit lazy here, make sure you get a calculator, but I'll do 690 minus 360. My leftover angle is 330. Okay, and then I'll go on to my circle at 330 degrees and I'll find the cosine of that. So take a look at your circle. 330 is here. My x value is a √3/2. Let's say I want the sine of -60. Well, that angle, that's too small to be on my circle. So I'm going to take -60 degrees. And I'm going to have to add 360 to that so that I can know where on my circle I should be looking. So I see that that is the same as 300 degrees. And then I'll find the sine of that on the circle. Okay, so let's put my circle back up here. 300 degrees is going to be here. My ordered pair is 1/2 common negative √3/2, and then I'm picking that y value. Okay. All right, so let's get into the new stuff. So you had sine, cosine, and then each of those has what's called a reciprocal ID. Remember, reciprocal IDs basically just mean you're going to flip. So if I want cosecant, that's going to be sine flipped. Okay, and then secant, that's going to be cosine flipped. So let's say that I want to find CSC of 120. Well, then I'm going to find the sine of 120, and then I'm going to flip it. Okay. So CSC and sine are partners. So I'm going to find the sine of 120. Let me put my circle back up here. Okay, 120 is here. Sine is my y coordinate. So I'm picking root 3 over 2, but then I'm going to flip it to make it 2 over root 3. Now, all of the same rules apply for square roots. You're not allowed to leave them on the bottom. So you'll repeat your root 3, and that will give you 2 root 3 on top, and then just a regular 3 on top. Okay, so it says right here, recall that answers should be written in fully simplified form, no square roots in the denominator. Okay, let's do another one like that. I want secant 120. Well, I know that secant is going to be whatever cosine of 120 is, and then I'm going to flip it. So let's look on our circle for 120 degrees. Okay, remember we were just there. This is 120. Cosine is my x, so it's minus a half. But if I flip it, that's going to be minus 2 over 1. And then negative 2 divided by 1 is going to stay negative 2. Okay, next one, I want CSC of 225. Well, then I'm going to find the sine of 225. Then I'm going to flip it. So let's look on our circle for 225 degrees. We know that sine will be the y value. So 225 is here. I see my y value is negative root 2 over 2, and then I'm going to flip that. So instead of negative 2 root 2, it'll be negative 2 over square root 2, like that. But then remember the rule, no square roots on the bottom. So we're going to go root 2, root 2. On top, I'll have negative 2 root 2. But then on bottom, watch what happens here. Square root 2 times square root 2 again becomes a regular 2. And then remember, we talked about that if these are normal numbers in the front, we can divide those, and 2 divided by 2 is going to cross out. Okay, technically it crosses out to a 1. So your answer is negative 1 root 2. Okay, but we don't have to write the 1, but you could if you want. Okay, next one, I want secant 150. Well, remember, secant up here, it says, is going to be cosine flipped. So I'm going to find the cosine of 150, then I'm going to flip it. So look on your circle. Cosine 150 is here. Cosine is the x, and then I'm going to flip that. So instead of negative root 3 over 2, I'm going to do negative 2 over root 3. And then I see, oh, look at that. My root 3 is on the bottom. Got to fix it. Okay, put that here and here. So negative 2 root 3 over 3 would be your final answer. Okay. All right. Let's skip ahead, please, to number 18. Okay, we'll do 17 and 18 here. So 17 is the secant of 0. So I'm going to find the cosine of 0, then flip. Versus CSC is going to be the sine of 0, then. So find 0 degrees on your circle. 0 degrees on your circle. We know that would be right here at the start. My x value is a 1. My y value is a 0. So I want you to think about if I needed these to be fractions. Let's say I want 1 first for cosine. 1 can be made a fraction by putting it over 1. But if I flip 1 over 1, I see that it's going to end up basically staying exactly the same. Now, that is not the case for 0. If I take my 0, so back at my circle, if I want these to be fractions, I'm going to put them both over 1. And when I flip 0 over 1, okay, think about this with me. If it's originally 0 over 1, then when I flip that, now I'm going to have 1 over 0. And remember, you are never allowed to divide by 0, so that's going to be undefined. And when you do today's homework, you should notice there's a button for undefined. So I'm going to put right here, no 0 left on the bottom. Okay. Can't divide by 0. All right, let's do last two here. We want 270 degrees. CSC is going to be sine of 270 flipped. And then SEC is going to be cosine of 270. So if you look on your circle, 270 is going to be pointed straight down. Okay, so 270 is this angle right here. I see that my X is a 0. So remember that would be 0 over 1, and then we're going to flip it. That would go to 1 over 0, which is not allowed. That would go to undefined. Okay, versus for my Y value for sine, let's look back at our circle. So it was originally 0 over 1, negative 1. So if I were to flip this, oops. Okay, negative 1 over 1 is going to flip to 1 over negative 1. And now think about, that's basically the same thing. Because if I do 1 divided by negative 1, bam, I still get negative. Okay. So essentially, if you're trying to flip a 0, you can't. But if you're trying to flip a 1 or negative 1, your value is going to stay identical to what it already was. Okay. All right, we are almost done with your notes. Go ahead and turn the page for me, please. Tangent and cotangent are going to come from dividing sine and cosine. Okay, so your tangent is going to be sine divided by cosine, which in this case will be the Y on the circle divided by the X on the circle. So let's say that I wanted to do number 26, which says tan 120. I would split that up. Remember that tangent is the same as sine over cosine. So I'm going to do the sine of 120 divided by the cosine of 120. And then remember what we said, that's basically going to be whatever the Y is at that position divided by the X at that position. So let's look at my circle. 120 is here. And I see that my sine is a root 3 over 2. Write that down. Divided by my X is a minus 1/2. So my Y is a root 3 over 2. My X is a minus 1/2. Okay, in order for me to divide fractions, you should have learned in algebra 2. Okay, that if I'm trying to divide fraction by fraction, you're going to keep, change, flip. Now, your teacher may not have used this little adorable acronym. Okay, but essentially, you're going to keep the top the same, so root 3 over 2. You're going to change the divide by to a multiply, and then you're going to flip whatever the bottom fraction is. So if it's a negative 1 over 2, now that's a negative 2 over. Okay. Then from there, I notice that I have a 2 on top and on bottom. That means that those can cancel out. So essentially, my final answer would be root 3 times a negative becomes a negative root 3. And then on bottom, my 2's gone, I would just keep a 1. And remember, anything divided by 1 is really just the top. So I would just keep that negative root 3. Okay. All right, let's do another one like that. I want tan 135. Well, then I know that tan 135 is going to be sine 135 over cosine 135. Okay, then remember, we know also that that's going to be whatever the y is over the x at that position. So find 135 on your circle. 135 is right here. And I see that my y is a root 2 over 2. My x is a negative root 2 over 2. So that would be root 2 over 2 divided by negative root 2 over 2. And then I'm like, oh no, fraction over fraction. What am I going to do? Keep, change, flip. So we're going to keep the first root 2 over 2. We're going to change it to a multiply problem. And then we're going to flip whatever the bottom fraction is. So if it was a negative root 2 over 2, now it's a 2 over root 2. Okay, then I notice, ooh, I have a 2 top and bottom. And then I have a root 2 top and bottom. Then essentially everything crossed out as my negative, except for my negative, then I would keep a 1 as a placeholder. Okay, so if everything cancels out, meaning you have the same 2's top and bottom and root 2's top and bottom, then you would just keep the 1 left over and then this negative that did not cross out. Okay, but you have to leave something as a placeholder, so you would leave a 1. Okay, cotangent, if you remember, is the original tangent, but flipped. So instead of sine over cosine, it's going to be cosine over sine. Instead of using y over x, we'll use x over y. So for number 28, let's say I want the cotan of 240. Then I would say, oh, well, if it's cotan, I'm using cosine over sine. So cosine of 240 over sine of 240. But then I know when I look at my circle, that's going to be whatever this x is divided by this y. So find 240 on your circle. I see 240 is here. And then I see that my x is a minus 1/2 divided by my y is a minus root 3 over 2. And then I'm like, oh no, fraction divided by a fraction. Don't worry, keep, change, flip. So remember, we're keeping the top one the same. We're changing it to a multiply. And then we're flipping this bottom guy. So instead of a root 3 over 2, now it's a 2 over root. I notice one of my 2's is on top, the other is on bottom. And then I also notice that I have a negative times a negative. Okay, so we know that negative times a negative crosses out, 2 divided by 2 crosses out. So all that I'm left with is a 1 on top and a root 3 on bottom. Okay, when you do your homework, it says to keep it in simplified radical form. What that means is no square roots left on the bottom. Okay, but we know how to fix this from our last unit. You're going to root 3 top and bottom. And that's going to give you 1 root 3 over regular 3. Okay. You know, you don't have to put the 1 here, but if you did put it, it wouldn't be wrong. Okay. All right, last couple of these. Let's do number 29. I want tan of minus 30, but then I'm like, oh no, that's too small to be on my circle. So remember, how do I fix an angle that's too small? I'm going to add 360 degrees to it. So let's do my negative 30 degrees that I have. I'm going to add 360 back to put myself in circle range. Okay, and now I know, oh, I can use 330 instead. Okay. Then I also notice that I want tangent. Remember that tangent of 330 is going to be y over x. Okay, versus if it was cotan, I would do x over y. So let's find 330 degrees on our circle. Y over x. 330 is here. My y is a negative 1/2 over my x is a root 3 over 2. So negative 1/2 over root 3 over 2. And then remember, now we don't have to be scared of fraction divided by fraction because you're going to keep, change, and then flip. So that would be 2 over root 3. My 2's are still going to cross out. So I would get -1 on top over root 3. But then I know I can't leave it like that because of the square root. So we're just going to fix it.
Good morning, Eagle. Today is Wednesday, February 5th. I'm Rebecca. And I'm Rachel. And you're listening.
So that'd be -√3 over.
Flag.
Okay, I'm going to pause the video and come back when the announcements are over. Okay, thank you for being patient. Let's finish our notes. So we have 3 left, almost done. So the next one says we want cotan of -90. Now, I noticed that -90, that is too small to be on my circle. So I'm going to take -90 in my calculator. And then I'm going to add 360 to that to put myself in range on the circle. So I see that that is the same position as 270. So I'll find the cotan of 270. Okay, remember that for cotan, look at the top of your notes, that's going to be x over y. So I'm going to go to my circle. Remember, 270 is perfectly straight down. I see my x is a 0. My y is a -1. So it'd be 0 divided by -1. And then I'm going to write it over here to the side. That's x over y. Okay, from here, remember that in my calculator, if I do 0 divided by -1, oops, sorry, hold on. Okay, if I do 0 divided by -1, that is okay. I'm going to still get 0. So one way for you to kind of remember, okay, is that it is okay to get 0 on top. You're going to get 0, but no, you can't get it on the bottom. That's undefined. Okay, so a 0 on top is just fine, but you're not allowed to have 1 on top. Okay. Next one, I want the tan of 180. So remember, tan is going to be y over x. Okay, also keep in mind that 180 is already standard degrees, which means I can already find it on my circle. So 180 is right here. My y value is a 0. And my x value is a -1. Okay, then think about, is that okay or no? Okay, if the 0's on top, that's okay. The answer is 0. Okay. Last one. We have tan 495. Oh no, that's too big to be on my circle. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 495, take away 360. Okay, whatever degrees are left over, that's where we'll look on the circle. So I'm going to find the tan of 135 degrees. Remember that tangent is going to be y over x. So find your 135. 135 is right here. My y is a √2 over 2 divided by -√2 over 2. So √2 over 2 divided by -√2 over 2. And then I see fraction divided by fraction. That's going to be a keep, change, flip. So I'm going to keep the √2 over 2 on top. I'm going to change it to a multiply. And then I'm going to flip -√2 over 2. So that'd be -2 over 2. Okay, and then from there, you'll see basically everything crosses out. √2 are gone. 2 and 2 are gone. The only thing that survives is this little negative, but I have to keep a 1 as a placeholder. Okay. So from here, you are just doing your homework. Go ahead and get started on that. And then if you need to go back and finish last time's notes and homework, like if you were testing, then go ahead and do that. Okay, thanks. Have a great day. And I'll see you guys on Friday.